Hey, Piers Morgan is with us now. Piers, when you're looking at all this, could you give us an idea of how the king is doing? I think he spent the last 2 years battling cancer, and we heard about the treatment, which is never easy.
And
How's
Kate.
he doing?
And Kate, too.
And Kate.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at actually 3 people there who've been in health woes. The king has had cancer, obviously. Kate's had cancer. And the Queen has been recovering from sinusitis. She wasn't able to attend a major royal funeral yesterday. So they've all been through different kinds of health problems. Look, the King is in his mid-70s. He's been pretty sick, I think, with the cancer, but he's a remarkably resilient man, like his mother was, like so many of the royals are. And there was absolutely no chance he wasn't going to be there today to lead the charge for the president. And I have to say, I've covered a lot of royal events, a lot of state visits over the years, but for American presidents, other foreign leaders. I don't think I've ever seen anything quite on the scale that's being rolled out here for President Trump. And that is a mark of the respect, I think, that the UK has for the United States. This is really quite exceptional. And I think that, I'd like to just put that on record. They wouldn't even do this for Brian Kilmeade. That's how big this is.
Well, you don't know that for sure. You don't know that for sure. That's just your
No,
speculation.
I do know that as a nailed down certainty.
Hey, Piers, I'm curious. I know in the UK, everything is about protocol. I don't think I've ever witnessed American president and First Lady. They were extremely chatty immediately there.
Right.
Normally, it's very strict and everyone is standing for the photo. Is that because of that prior relationship or just the respect they have for him?
Well, I think, A, they know each other quite well now. And I think, secondly, I spoke to one of the people that you've just seen with the president. I won't say which one it was, but one of them told me, one of the royals, that they love him coming into town because he's very different to most of the people that come that they have to meet. They have to meet a lot of boring people. But in President Trump, the one thing, whether you like him or not, President Trump, no one's ever called him boring. And I think they find it pretty entertaining when he comes to town. And I think they genuinely like him. I think also important to note that the history of Donald Trump and the British royal family is really embedded in him, and they know that. Apologies for the sirens going off behind me. I spoke to Donald Trump a few years ago about the fact that when television first came out in the early 50s, then the first really major televised event in the world was the coronation of Queen Elizabeth. And Donald Trump's mother, obviously Scottish, she sat him down. He was about 6 years old, and they were in New York, I think, and they watched it together on this small television. And that really cemented in Donald Trump his mother's love for the royal family, his mother's respect for the royal family. And I actually interviewed Donald Trump on Air Force One after he last went to see the Queen at Windsor Castle. And he flew in on Marine One, he came on the plane, and he was absolutely buzzing with real excitement about having spent quality time with the Queen, because it took him back to that moment he shared with his mother watching the coronation when the Queen was just in her mid-20s. So there's a long history there of Donald Trump with the royals. And I think that King Charles and Queen Camilla and the Princess of Wales, they know that. And I think that's why they really like him coming for these big royal events, because they know that it means a lot to him.
Martha, Piers, I don't know if who booked you, but it was a good idea. You know a lot of stuff. So does Martha. Martha, not only do you have a big interview tomorrow, but for the UK,
the president,
they need us more. You have the President of the United States. They need us more than ever, because that Brexit, which was a buzzword years ago, it's really taken root now. It is a UK separate from the EU, and we could be helping to supplant to be the main trading partner. And we have yet to, and we're in the middle of executing that trade deal.
Absolutely, Brian. And I think that was one of the hopes for the original plan for Brexit, that it would strengthen England's ties with other countries, obviously primarily with the United States. A little glimpse inside the carriage there as they're going on their procession around inside the gardens at Windsor Castle. But it is, the hope that they will be able to strengthen this bond. And you look at the relationship with the EU. The EU, a couple of members have continued to buy Russian oil. They are huge buyers of liquid natural gas from Russia. So this is a huge issue, because you think about the global dynamic in the world. You've got that meeting that we just saw a couple of weeks ago with Modi of India, Vladimir Putin of Russia and President Xi of China. Remember, President Trump will speak with Xi on Friday. That's a very big conversation.
Huge.
So look at the global dynamic, and you've got the lining up of the United States and the UK in this huge moment that the whole world will be watching. All of these things are very significant in terms of these relationships and how it shakes out in the global picture.
Pierce, question for you, so that you know the lay of the land, you live there. We were amazed after Charlie Kirk's death when we saw tens of thousands join far-right rallies in London. They were mourning his death. It sounds like your country is going through a lot of what we're going through in our country. And a lot of the articles I read this morning were talking about the protests against President Trump. So give us a map of the feelings amongst the residents in your country.
Yeah, well, first of all, I would say I've been really struck just driving through central London today and by the scenes in Windsor about the lack of protests against President Trump. Very, very different to his first state visit, and very indicative that I think that whether people like Donald Trump personally or not, very interesting piece in The Economist magazine, very respected economic magazine this week, saying that Trumpism, in other words, what Donald Trump stands for, his policies, his sort of gut feeling for how things should be, is getting more and more popular in the United Kingdom. And what you saw in the big march on Saturday, yes, some of the people marching were far right, and some of them, frankly, were thugs and got into fights with police. But they were a small minority. There were over 100,000 people in that march, one of the biggest marches in modern times, and many of them were just regular, ordinary members of the public, not identifying as far right at all, but they're fed up with things like unrestricted illegal migrants coming over our southern border on the small boats that you've talked about, I know, many times. That problem, we were assured by Prime Minister Keir Starmer he was going to smash the gangs. That was his big mission statement when he was running to be Prime Minister. Well, he's been Prime Minister every year, and actually the numbers of people coming over on the small boats on our southern border have increased. So the gangs haven't been smashed, but record numbers of migrants coming in illegally, that has been smashed, those records. So that's a big concern for people, as is housing the would-be asylum seekers as they frame themselves, but many, of course, are economic migrants, it turns out. They're being housed in pretty nice hotels and being treated in a way that many British people are struggling to live at that quality of life themselves. So a lot of resentment building up, a lot of extra pressure on public services. So when people marched on Saturday, they were, I think, a lot of them thinking, you know, we could do with a bit of Donald Trump in our country. Keir Starmer's getting very unpopular. A series of scandals. The UK ambassador, Peter Mandelson, to Washington has just had to resign in a scandal connected to the Jeffrey Epstein scandal. You know, he had his deputy leader, Angela Rayner, had to resign the week before. It feels like a government in crisis, and people are crying out, I think, for strong leadership, which is why, for example, Nigel Farage, a close friend of Donald Trump, is increasing in support and popularity with his Reform Party here. So there's a lot of turmoil in the UK, and a lot of people are saying to me, you know, even if they don't like Trump personally, I do, but not everybody does, but they're saying even if you don't like him personally, it's hard to disagree with a leader who believes in a strong border, who believes in tackling crime aggressively, who believes in fewer foreign wars, who believes in paying less taxes and so on. And I think that people are looking at it and saying, yeah, we could do with a bit of Trumpism here.
Well, Piers, that's been the most fascinating
By the way, look at this.
I know, it's beautiful.
I feel like I'm watching a movie from the 1700s.
Never seen anything like this before. Obviously, a great honor for the president. Piers, you talk about the politics domestically there in the UK, and Starmer, as progressive as he is, he gets along with the president. How do they make this work?
Well, I think that, if anything, the one thing you could say Keir Starmer has played very well since coming into office is the relationship with Donald Trump. And I've spoken to President Trump about this. In fact, I spoke to him the day after Keir Starmer was in the Oval Office giving him the letter from King Charles about this historic second state visit. And Donald Trump said, look, obviously we're different politically, but he said, I get on with him very well. He's a straight talker, straight shooter. We have a good relationship, and that's increased, I think, and they built on that ever since. I think the trade deal we did was a good thing for the UK. and I think indicative again of that good relationship. So although Keir Starmer has lots of domestic problems, on the international stage, I think particularly the way he's forged a good friendship and relationship with the President of the United States, that's been a good thing.
So if I could bring in Benjamin Hall for a second. Benjamin, big story in the London Times today about Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and his great relationship with the former prince turned king that goes back decades to the late 90s, and they've become personal friends. If you are looking to reduce tariffs and get that trade deal, and this was the first deal to come in, that's the guy to be tight with, because the president really listens to Scott Bessent.
Well, absolutely, and that's what they were hoping might take place tomorrow as well. Take steel, for example, where around the world the tariffs are at 50%. Well, the UK has that down to 25%. And they were hoping that would come down lower, and I know Secretary Bessent is going to be at Chequers tomorrow talking about that, but there were no quotas involved in that. And so I believe that the UK was given an option. They could have a smaller quota at a lower percentage, or they could stick at 25%. And they've decided that overall 25% will be better. But look, the UK economy needs a lot of support at the moment. It really is floundering. And I think that Keir Starmer and the Prime Minister here, who has so many negative things on his plate at the moment, Piers just talked about quite a few of them, he is hoping that that relationship with the US will bring some good news over the next couple of days. And look, many people are looking ahead as well. And one of the key parts to talk about tomorrow is countering China. It's about countering China in the AI race. It's about providing all the infrastructure for that. And so that's one place where the two countries are working very, very close. They're hand in hand. And I think that's where we will see the big announcements tomorrow, is on countering China, making sure the AI future is secure.
I think Ridley
but
Scott...
certainly the UK needs its help.
This seems like Ridley Scott is doing a movie dated in the 1810.
Well, Martha, we were there for when Harry and Meghan were married. And is this the long driveway that is in front of Windsor Castle? I know usually people enter through the back entrance, which we saw oftentimes during that week when we were there. But when they got married, they went around the entire town of Windsor. Everyone was lining the streets, and they came back up this long driveway.
Yeah, the long walk is what you are correctly referring to, Inslee. And Ben and I are both trying to get a look at this vantage point, because I know they are inside the walls of Windsor Castle for this entire visit. And at Harry and Meghan's wedding, they did a procession through town and curved up around the castle so that people could greet them and see them. But I think security measures are a major part of why you're not seeing anything outside of the walls and around town right now.
That's good.
I don't know if Ben, if you have anything to add on.
I mean, to Martha's point real quickly, there's not a Secret Service agent in sight. The vehicle is the carriage. This is unheard of for an American president. And honestly, there's no other country where this would be allowed. This just shows you the protection of the president, and this is why the camera angles are off a little bit right now. They don't want you to know exactly where he is.
It's the castle that kept out barbarians 200 years ago.
I mean, just a sight to see.
Yeah, it's a good point. These are very tight camera shots, and they do make it a little difficult to tell where they are at any given moment within the park. But you see them entering the castle walls as they move through that archway right now, and then they will enter the green in the center here. And this is where they'll be greeted by, and Ben made this point earlier, 3 of the different guard groups, including the Royal Guard, the Grenadier Guard, the Scots Guard, and the Coldstream Guards. I'm looking at Ben to make sure that I have that correct. He's nodding. So this is, I just want to emphasize again how unprecedented this is, and that the entire purpose of this and the preparation that's gone on for the last 6 to 8 weeks on the part of every single person who you see as part of this is to roll out the red carpet in the biggest way possible for Donald Trump.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.